Hello everyone, my name is Mike, welcome back to the YouTube channel, and today we're continuing the Sabaton week by having a look at the Ghost in the Trenches. Hope you enjoy. So Ghost in the Trenches, now I'm going into this relatively unknown. It was only until recently that somebody actually said that it was about a sniper during the First World War. But other than that, that's practically all I know about it. And so I'm going into this willing to hear some more banging music that Sabaton always seems to deliver on, and learn just as much as you guys are. I'll try and fill in the gaps here and there where I can provide some tidbits of information regardless about the First World War or perhaps sniping. But other than that, I'm fully prepared to just go into this and just learn some new history. Alright, let's get into it.
Between the lines, a soldier breaking the confines. A force to fight from all the seas, a war in foreign land, await the eager recruits. And in the midst among the men, a soldier with a different past returns to his roots. Into battle, the gas has them in. Then this soldier invoked the spirits of the wind. Under fire, a ghost that rules the battlefield. Move between the lines, a soldier breaking the confines. An outlaw man and rifle, a marksman and a scout revealed. Makes his way from trench to trench alone, moving undetected.
So yeah, I'm just pausing that there, and I have to say that from the photo that was shown at the beginning, I didn't quite recognise the individual, and indeed I probably feel like I should know who this person is, but I honestly can't at present. I don't know who they are yet. But yeah, sniping in the First World War, as some of the pictures in this video showed earlier, snipers seeming to be laying down in the middle of no man's land in between trenches like the lyrics suggest. And that's very much how sniping operated for large parts of the First World War. Snipers very often would go into no man's land behind sheets of metal, behind trees, behind practically wherever they could get a vantage point and some degree of cover, and they would sit there and wait and then pick off people as they stepped over onto firing steps to allow people to pass, people as they peeked, people just doing their duties essentially. And that's why it led to the things like periscopes and stuff like that, where people could look out from trenches from safety so they wouldn't be shot at. But the point is, snipers posed a constant and frequent risk to soldiers during the First World War in the trenches because, you know, it's a vantage point, it's a stationary battlefield, you're not moving a lot, and so that means that when you poke your head above the trench, it's an incredibly stationary kind of target that a sniper is just waiting there for that moment. And so, you know, it led themselves to individuals like this going into no man's land. And particularly as well, the First World War is also where ghillie suits kind of came into play. For those of you who have ever played any video games before, you know, things like Armour, things like Call of Duty, I know that they are in that type of thing, or in films when you see these kind of, these almost look like Wookiee creatures dressed all in kind of camouflage to basically blend in with their environment. Although that was technically used in the Second World War by Scottish units. In fact, the word ghillie itself comes from Scottish Gaelic, and essentially these individuals originally were kind of like prime kind of poachers or gamekeepers and stuff like that, who would disguise themselves in order to do these things. But it really came to play in the First World War, where the British started deploying snipers dressed in ghillie suits to blend in with the environment in no man's land, to basically make their snipers even more efficient and protected. And later on in the war, the Germans then adopted their own, and as more nations then followed. So that's kind of how sniping operated, but as I said, I don't particularly know who this individual is. However, while I didn't recognise the individual from his photograph, I'll just try and find it here. Where are we? It leads me to believe that he is of kind of a Native American descent at least. Either a American citizen who then volunteered in either the British or the Canadian Armed Forces, because I'm just looking at these individuals here. They seem to be First Nation or Native American in their descent, and also the uniforms that they're wearing look remarkably similar to British Commonwealth uniform, the cap and the tunic. So that leads me to think that perhaps it's either a Native American volunteering in the British or British Commonwealth forces, or it's a naturalised Canadian, a Canadian First Nation. serving in this. And the reason why it leads me to think more so Canadian rather than American is because of the Battle of Passchendaele. Particularly at Passchendaele, the Battle of Passchendaele, the reason why it makes me think that the Canadians were there was because the Canadians saw an extreme amount of action on the line. In fact, it was the Canadian Corps that actually eventually pushed through and kind of captured Passchendaele, if you will. But they also paid extremely dearly for the cost, as did many of the Commonwealth nations that also came to aid Britain during this time. And again, their sacrifices can't be forgotten. If you have an opportunity to as well, I know a lot of my viewers are American, but if you ever do find yourself coming to Europe, then please do head to France and Belgium and view the war memorials and the war graves of the First World War. Particularly one place that I've been as well has been Vimy Ridge, which was part of the battle of Arras. And again, that is harrowing. It's a memorial totally dedicated to Canadian troops themselves, and that's breathtaking. If I can, I'll impose some pictures of it. But I really do recommend, if you can, check it out, because it's really harrowing. And they do also have some guides. The guide who took me around there some years ago now was also a Canadian who descended from some of the soldiers who fought in that battle, both at Vimy Ridge and at Ypres. And so I definitely recommend, if you can, after COVID is done and when it's safe to do so, please go check out them, because it's a reminder of what those who went before did, what they sacrificed for it, essentially. And those people, these individuals like this individual that I don't know, still deserve to have their name remembered, because they're people. But that's kind of my tirade over. I'm just sidestepping because I don't actually know who this individual is yet, but we'll get into this. And so, on the fields of Passchendaele.
Passchendaele, a guiding light for reinforcements finding their way. And in the battle of the scar, bring ammo over no man's land and fire away. In the battle, the cast out the wind. Let Gamma invoke the spirits of the wind. Under fire, a ghost that rules the battlefield. Move between the lines, a soldier breaking the confines. Stand out the man and the rifle, a marksman and a scout reveal. Makes his way from trench to trench alone, moving undetected.
Okay. So I'll just allow this to play just quickly as well. So it seemed like I was correct in my assumption that he is First Nation, either a Native American or Canadian, like I think he is. But I'm also curious as well. I hope the video will tell us about this. When it says a marksman and scout, I wonder if that's a play on words, as in, is he talking about a sniper team like what we have now, where we have a sniper and a spotter who calls out targets for the sniper to hit, or is it kind of a play on words of a scout? His role kind of as in his indigenous community, kind of being that hunter, that poacher, using those skills and applying them to a military format, similar to what I referenced to Simo Häyhä, being an extremely competent hunter, and then he took that into his service during the Winter War. I wonder if it's a similar thing here, but that was just a little aside that I wanted to add on here. But hopefully this video will tell us more about him. And going from it, he survived both the First and Second World War. Probably didn't serve in the Second World War given his age, but certainly the First, which is an achievement in its own right. Okay, so that's the end of the video, it seems. Yeah, so I feel thoroughly ashamed that I don't actually know who this individual is. I can't tell in all my time I haven't actually stumbled upon him, which is extremely embarrassing, to be fair, considering that I know many snipers from the Second World War, and yet my knowledge of this man who served for, well, for our side, if you will, he's fought on the side of the Allies, or the Triple Entente, that I don't actually know his name, and I don't know about him. I have seen that there is a Sabaton history video about this song, so I'm definitely going over and check that out. And please, if you are like me and don't know and want to learn more about this incredible individual, then please come along and watch that with me, as I will be checking out that video as well with you guys. But yeah, I mean, over 300 kills with the Ross rifle. I mean, despite it being incredibly morbid, that's almost an achievement in its own right. The Ross rifle was much maligned. A lot of soldiers actually hated using it. It was almost like comparable to like using the L85A1, to give a more modern kind of version of that, if you will. The British Army applied the L85A1, and it was utterly hated by the troops that used it, and it was, you know, constantly breaking down, constantly falling apart in some cases, and it, you know, the Ross rifle had a lot of complaints, similar to a lot of the complaints made about the Carcano and stuff like that by the Italian army during the Second World War. Particularly as well, not using the Lee Enfield, which in my opinion is one of the finest rifles ever used or made. But then again, that might just be my British bias coming through, but I absolutely love the Lee Enfield. So the fact that he done all that with a Ross rifle is an achievement. The fact that he survived the First World War, and he said he served for almost the First World War, and I presume that's because he didn't take any major casualties, or major injuries rather, to which case, again, going through almost the entire conflict without being taken out by it essentially is, again, another huge achievement for him. And so I'm certainly interested to learn more about this individual, because he deserves to be remembered. And so if you're interested just as me, you want to learn a bit more, then please join me in checking out Sabaton history video on this individual, because, as I said, I don't know him. I'm embarrassed the fact that I don't know him, and ashamed that I don't actually know him. And I want to rectify that, because he deserves to be remembered. As always, I apologise that I haven't been able to add too much to this video, as I usually do with some of the other songs, but I'm just not familiar with him, and so I can't really fit in where I don't know. And so I'm going to check out the Sabaton history video on him. Please come along and learn with me, and I hope you've enjoyed this. The link to this video will be in the description as always, and I hope to see you next time. Thank you ever so much for watching. Bye bye.